Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. Since Narrative 3 has been released, it's a big upgrade, and upgrading from an old project to a new project has its little quirks. So in today's tutorial, I'm going to try and show you some tips and tricks on how to upgrade from it. Every single project is going to be different, so I'm going to try and break this down in steps that I took when upgrading my existing project to try and go through and show you what to look out for and what I did. So the first thing I did was I changed from installing Narrative to the engine into individual project level. This gives you a lot more flexibility when you're customizing it to not have to change every single project, and it's really simple to do. All you do is come into your project where your U-project file is, create a folder called plugins, capital P with an S at the end, and then just drop Narrative in there. That's all I did. Next you can load Unreal up. Once you're in the engine, just verify that the plugin has actually updated in Narrative 3, so you can see mine is. Now, I have not touched this project at all yet, so everything looks okay. It's loaded correctly. There was no errors, no warnings. So I'm literally going to play the game and see what the errors are. And as soon as I start it, you can see I have 3 errors, which is pretty good. So I'm going to click on Open All Error Blueprints, just so I can. If you've got loads, I wouldn't recommend clicking Open. So one by one, I'm just going to come into it. So for my NPC, the error is that the NPC no longer exists on the begin dialogue. So in the new Narrative 3, the NPC has been replaced with the default NPC avatar. It's essentially the exact same, but it's just different wording for the variable. So all I'm going to do is delete the self, and as you can see, it's pre-populated with self, so I can compile that. And there we go, the NPC is done, so I can cross that off. Next is my pickup, and this is a common one you're going to see. So the previous narrative tasks have been removed from the system. They are still there for legacy to help you upgrade, but they're essentially gone and they won't work. So in this pickup here, I have a custom narrative event that I trigger when I pick it up, and I say I have this item. So you could go and there are 2 ways we can approach this. We can go and create a narrative blueprint task and replace all of my blueprint code in here with it. However, I'm going to take the second route where I just simply create a data task for picking items up. This is just going to be so I can get my game up and running, and then in the future I can come back and update it however I need. So I'm going to open up my blueprints and I'm going to go into my narrative, and I'm going to find my tasks folder, and I'm just simply going to replace it with _old, just because I can differentiate between the old tasks. And then in the new tasks folder, if you haven't got one, just create one. I'm going to come and right click narrative, and I'm going to create a new data task, and I'm going to call it NDT from narrative data task. I'm not going to call it DT because you might get mixed up with data tables, and I'm going to call it get item, like so. And then I'm going to just remove the NDTs from it so it looks neater. And then back in the pickup, it should be as simple as deleting narrative task off, creating it as a new variable, and then once you compile, it will fix it, and then you can just simply set this to be the default task, because then everything will update. I can now delete the narrative, so I can delete the narrative task off, and you can see it's in use, so I need to find where it's in use. So as you can see here, it's checking if it's actually valid, because if it's not valid, then it just skips completing the task. So I can come here, and I'm just going to put this task. If you have any items where I don't want it triggered, then I will just go and remove the narrative, and now I can successfully delete the narrative task. There we go, and now that's save and compile, so I can cross that off. So for this last one, mine is failing on any complete narrative task. It's a built-in event to narrative, and the reason mine is failing is I replaced the content from the old narrative so I could keep my UI changes. So I've just got a little bit of cleanup to do, but fortunately it's really easy. So what I'm going to do is delete the task off, and I'm going to promote it to a variable like so. Then in my get graph display text, I'm just going to delete task and put the new task in place to get the display name, and then I can just simply compile and delete the old task. I'm going to rename this variable, and that's all you have to do. So now that I've fixed those errors, I can now try replaying the game. So immediately I can see that my quest at the beginning of the game for collectibles have broken. They're not showing anything. So we'll come back to that short. So I know that I've got an NPC here, so I can come and talk to her to try the dialogue out. So as you can see, it skipped all of the dialogue and immediately began the quest where she's running away. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this NPC. I'm going to open her dialogue up. So for me, I store it as a variable on the NPC, so I can open it up, and it all looks okay here. So I'll double click it, and one thing you will notice is the nodes with their new styling will be a bit squished. So I'm just going to come and separate these out a little bit just to give myself some more room. And for some reason, I can see this node has been reverted over. That's just probably a legacy bug with updating. So I'm just going to turn that node back to a normal node. There we go. And now I'm going to compile it. So I can't see anything immediately wrong with it because it looks like everything's all plugged in correctly. The begin quest is set. It's set to at the start. So I'm going to change that to the end because that's one thing I know I need. It's starting the correct quest. It's got all the events on. So I am just going to set all of my events to run at the end because that's where I have built this to actually run from. There we go. So all the events now have been changed. So one of the bugs that I did receive early on was sometimes dialogue just wouldn't work unless you compiled it, and it just had some default variables in C++ that needed to be reinitialized during the compile process. So now that I've compiled it, if I run up to and test it, you can see the dialogue is now working, and you can see my player is visible, which is good. So I can test it. So I will come and say, can we begin a quest? So she's going to get into position. Okay, the narrative events are working, that's good. And she's starting to run. Perfect. And if I run up to her, nothing happens. So that quest is still broke. So it still says chase Velia, even though that quest isn't there. So this is the next big thing you have to do for narrative. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over to my quest, which I know is not working, and I'm going to... So this is one of the big ones on narrative. As you can see, quests actually don't have a success and fail node anymore, and the tasks are gone. But this is not a big issue. So the NPC catch controller, that should start whenever, so that's completely fine. I believe that event's work. However, these two nodes here, I need to repopulate with the correct task. So this Velia beat you to the shops, I know that is a fail node. So I can drag this up and I can do fail the quest, and you can see the difference between them. So I'm just going to put all this data back into it. I can take the events, that's all normal, and I can paste it into here. And I can delete that node off. Then I can do the exact same thing for the success node. There we are, so it's looking better already. Now for the key one is these two tasks here. Now there are two ways you can do it. You can again use your new custom blueprint task, but since I've took the data route just so I can get my game back up and running as quickly as possible, I'm going to drag back down and I'm going to simply do complete narrative data task. I'm going to delete the quest state. The task here will be my get item and the argument will be Velia. As you can see, we can see it here. And then I can also go and get the description, catch Velia before she reaches the shop. So I need to find what these two tasks were meant to be. Unfortunately, narrative won't tell us what task it was, but that's really easy to reverse engineer. So the spawn NPC catch controller, I know controls it for mine. So I'm going to find my catch. So here's my blueprint catch NPC controller. And in here, we can see that we have a warning for this one. And the task I need is an NT cat NPC. So all I'm going to do is come into my new tasks and I'm going to create a new data task called NDT cat NPC. I'll open this up, just remove the NDTs, and now I can simply plug this in to here, catch NPC. Then I can refresh this node and you'll see that task disappear. Looking good so far. Next, I have the fail node, which is a lose NPC, and then I can simply switch this over and right click refresh. There we go. So the node has disappeared, so if I continue now, you can see the warning has disappeared, which means I can now come back into here, and on this task here, I can simply add a new complete narrative data task, and the data task will be a type of lose NPC, meaning she's got there first, and the argument will be Velia. And I can also see it will be hidden, so I can just hidden as well. Perfect. Now I can do the exact same thing for this one below, but this one in my game is ever so slightly different, that it has a description, so I'm going to override the description, and then it's not hidden this time. And there we go. Compile and save. So now let's give it a go. And now you can see if I run up to her and begin the quest, all the dialogue's working, the quest is now successfully saying catch her before she reaches the shop. So if I just let her run off and get there, that it's successfully failed the quest because she beat me there. If I restart the quest, it should teleport us back to the beginning, and then she's going, and if I run up and catch her, quest succeeds. There we go, we've caught her. Perfect. So as you can see, the quest is now working in narrative 3. And using data tasks is nowhere near a cop-out. It is a good way of doing it. It's why it was built in the first place. And you'll find that more and more quests you do, and it might seem daunting at first having to go through every single quest in your game to try and fix it, but if you've made your quests very generic and used reusable components, it will fall more into line more often. So for example, in my Velia, I also have one where she gives us a tour. Here we go, Palace Tour. So you can see we'll load this one up and it'll be the exact same scenario where there's no test to it, and I'll click the events and I'll just hit them to run at the end, which will begin it correctly. So on here we have an event that spawns a follow NPC controller. So I will come and load up my follow NPC controller to reverse engineer it. Here we go. So this should be very, very similar. You can see we have warnings. One of them is a lose NPC. So I will just populate that with lose NPC and refresh. There we go. That's a lot quicker already. And then this new new one is a follow NPC, which we do not have yet. So I'm going to copy the lose NPC and I'm just going to call it follow NPC. There we are. And now I can simply populate the task with the follow NPC and I can refresh it. And now with that, I can simply come in, you followed her, I can set it to my follow NPC data task, and I'll set the description to simply be follow Velia Palace. Follow Velia to the palace. And now for this other one, you lost Velia, so I can come in and I can take a good guess that it's probably going to be the lost lose NPC data task, and the argument will be Velia. And this is also hidden, as you can see here. And now I can give this a go. So we should successfully be able to take a palace tour. There we go. So now you can see if we run up, can I have a tour, please? Everything's looking fine, and she's not moving, which is okay. So we can test the distance meter, so we can see if I run away, does the quest fail? Yes, so we have a failure, which is good. It means it is working. So we need to take another look at this. So one thing I did forget here is we need to create these new states again. So I will fail the quest and I will just simply copy everything over. And then I can copy the events and I can paste them like so. And then I can delete this off. And I will also do the same for the success. There we go. So now in order to try and figure out what was with it, it could be the quest succeed or the fail nodes. I'm not entirely sure. So after I've compiled it, I'm going to come up and test it again. Let's see what happens now. So she's not moving again, which is concerning. So let's have a look up here. So it should spawn a follow NPC controller, which it is doing. So that's all okay. It's set all the properties on it, so I'm happy with that. Let's open it up. So at the moment, it's checking if she has arrived at her destination. And we already know she hasn't because she's not even moving. So that points us in a different direction, I think. There we go. And in the end, it wasn't even anything to do with narrative. So after going through and checking all of the spawn events, this is where I make her run. It was nothing to do with that. All it was is I didn't load enough of the material, enough of the map in order to render the nav mesh. So you can see now when I start it, she will successfully run. We've already tested the fail event, so we will see if we just follow her to the event, the quest should complete, and we've successfully made quest work in narrative 3. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's the path I take in order to convert my tasks over to narrative 3. Now I have quite a few quests built into this game, as you can see here, and I guarantee some of you have way more than me. And it will take time, but once you start converting some of them, the generic ones, it should fall along a lot easier. So thank you for watching. I hope you liked it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.